Let's go to Dave in Southend. What are you making of this, Dave? Have you moved on?
Well, let me get this first, Mr. Collins. I lost my job because of lockdowns. I was in the aviation industry, and no, I didn't get furlough. No, I didn't get no help before you asked that question, all the rest of it. I've had to scratch around trying to get bits of jobs here and there in the lockdown, and I've now found a job as an ad hoc driver for the NHS. Now, I can't do that now because the cost of living, petrol, insurances, wear and tear on my car is forcing me not to be able to do that anymore either because I can't put my prices up. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sick and tired, basically, of you guys in the media telling me I've got to move on. Mr. Collins, have you worked through the COVID condition? You did. Did you still get paid for the whole lot? You did. Did all them politicians get paid? They did. Well, people like me did not. People like me cannot move on because of what has been done to us, the devastation of our lives. There are people losing their businesses, their houses. But what was so important about the media, that you were still allowed to work, but restaurants couldn't. I can only just about move on when the person that invoked...
Well, lots of other people... It was never illegal to go to work, by the way, unless you were working in an area that was requiring...
You was in one of those industries that you was allowed to work.
Okay, that's a good thing, isn't it? That's not a bad thing.
Women, good thing. You was allowed to work, Mr. Collins. Yes. Why was a restaurant allowed to work?
Because that would have involved people crowding into a restaurant at a time of a pandemic. You don't really need to ask that question, do you?
You guys were used to you got the revenue from all the commercial thing for the government, and you guys were kept on board. People like us were never allowed to work. We had...
Well, some people couldn't work, you're right, but lots of people could go to work. Most of the country went to...
A lot of us, Mr. Collins, could not work.
Some people could.
We borrowed $400 billion.
Okay, yeah, we had a furlough scheme, and not everybody was able to claim on the furlough scheme. But most people carried on working, albeit in sometimes difficult conditions.
Not get paid. A lot of us didn't get paid.
Okay. I get all of that.
I can only move on when Johnson resigned.
All right, so that takes us back to the question then. Is it time to move on from Partygate, specifically? Not move on with life, move on from this story, Dave.
You can only say those, Mr. Collins. You never suffered. You still got...
No, but that's with all respect, that's not relevant to the question. That's not relevant to this question. Do we move on from specifically the parties in Downing Street? Not the damage that people have suffered. We will talk about that often. Not the issues around people like yourself who couldn't go to work. Not the issues around those that were affected and their businesses couldn't function or they closed down. Not that. Just the party. That's the question. Do we move on from the party issue, or are you correlating the two?
You can only... People like me, I can speak for me, okay?
Yeah.
I can only now move on. And bearing in mind, in the next election, I am not voting for any of those parties. It's reform. I can only now just move on from this after what we found out what these Tories have done when Johnson resigns.
OK, so you require him to go as almost a symbolic and a ethical point to appease and address what you believe has been a massive injustice. I get it. Dave, thank you very much indeed for that. We will take more calls on this as well. 0344 499 1000. Can you move on? Is it time to move on from Partygate? There is, of course, the Privileges Committee. There's a point, by the way, in all of this. Surely even the opposition would say, there is a point when you have to move on. What more would people want? There's been an investigation. There it is. There's Sue Gray's report. It's 37 pages. It's not the best thing I've ever read, but there it is. Boris Johnson has apologised. Some of the senior figures involved no longer work there. The chances of anybody opening a bottle of wine in Downing Street now would be, I would imagine, unless you're so stupid, would be completely rare, even on a day that you might be allowed to. So do we now move on from this? What are you meant to do? Stick with it forever? Is that the idea? It's been done. There is the report.